Last night, Fox News exploded as Hollywood titan Robert De Niro clashed with White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt in a fiery showdown, trading brutal jabs over Trump's legacy, leaving the studio charged with raw hostility and the nation gripped by the fallout. The studio lights burned hot, casting sharp shadows across the sleek Fox News set. The audience, a mix of suited conservatives and curious onlookers, buzzed with anticipation. Sean Hannity, perched at the anchor's desk, leaned forward, his voice cutting through the hum. "Tonight, we have a clash for the ages," he declared, his eyes glinting. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, faces off against Robert De Niro, Hollywood legend and outspoken critic of President Trump. Buckle up, folks. This is going to get heated. Karoline Leavitt, 27, strode onto the stage with the poise of a seasoned fighter. Her blonde hair was pulled back, her navy blazer crisp, her expression a blend of steel and serenity. At barely 5 feet tall, she carried herself with a presence that filled the room. Across from her, Robert De Niro, 81, slouched slightly in his chair, his weathered face set in a scowl. His dark suit and loosened tie gave him the air of a man who'd seen it all, and wasn't impressed. The contrast was stark. Youth versus experience. Political rising star versus cultural icon. Hannity wasted no time. "Mr. De Niro, you've called President Trump a disaster, a threat to democracy. Care to elaborate for our viewers?" De Niro leaned into the mic, his voice gravelly, deliberate. "Trump's a con man, a narcissist who's torn this country apart. His policies, his rhetoric, it's all a sham. And you," he jabbed a finger at Leavitt, "you're just his mouthpiece, parroting lies for a paycheck." The audience gasped, some cheering, others jeering. Leavitt didn't flinch. Her lips curved into a faint smile, but her eyes were ice. "Mr. De Niro," she began, her voice clear and steady, "I represent the American people, not just one man. You've spent decades in Hollywood playing tough guys on screen. But out here, in the real world, your words don't carry the weight you think they do." The crowd erupted, MAGA hats bobbing in approval. De Niro's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming on the table. Hannity, sensing blood in the water, pressed on. "Karoline, De Niro's been vocal about his support for Obama-Biden. Does that undermine his critique of Trump?" Leavitt seized the opening. "Let's talk about that," she said, her tone sharpening. "Mr. De Niro, you called Obama a savior, said Biden was the answer. Yet under their watch, we saw economic stagnation, border chaos, and foreign policy blunders. Why should anyone trust your judgment now?" De Niro's face reddened. "Don't twist my words, kid," he snapped. "I've been speaking truth. To power since before you were born. Trump's a clown, and you're his cheerleader. You think you can spin this? You're out of your depth." The studio crackled with tension. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice dropping to a razor's edge. "I'm not spinning anything. I'm here with facts. Under Trump, we had record-low unemployment, energy independence, and peace deals in the Middle East. You can't erase that with a tantrum." The MAGA contingent roared, their applause drowning out the scattered boos. De Niro shook his head, muttering something inaudible. Hannity, grinning, fanned the flames. "This is why we brought you two together. No scripts, no filter. Karoline, what's it like facing down a legend like De Niro?" Leavitt's eyes locked on De Niro's. "It's like debating any critic who's more interested in headlines than truth. I'm not here to play Hollywood games. I'm here for the people who want results, not rants." De Niro slammed his hand on the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "You're a puppet, Leavitt. You think you're tough? You're just reading Trump's lines." His voice boomed, but there was a tremor in it, a crack in his armor. The audience leaned forward, breathless. Leavitt's smile returned, colder now. "If I'm a puppet, then what are you, Mr. De Niro? A has-been shouting into the void, hoping someone still cares?" The words hung in the air, sharp and unrelenting. Hannity's eyes widened, and the crowd held its breath, waiting for De Niro's next move. The studio air thickened, charged with the weight of Leavitt's words. De Niro's eyes narrowed, his face a storm cloud ready to burst. He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles whitening. "You've got some nerve, kid," he growled, his voice low but venomous. "You think you can waltz in here, throw insults, and walk away clean? I've been fighting for what's right longer than you've been alive. You're nothing but a prop in Trump's circus." The audience erupted, a chaotic mix of cheers and boos. Leavitt didn't blink. Her posture remained impeccable, her gaze locked on De Niro like a predator sizing up its prey. "Fighting for what's right," she shot back, her tone laced with mockery. "You mean grandstanding at award shows, preaching to your elite friends, while the rest of America struggles? Spare me the hero act, Mr. De Niro. You're not in a movie. This is real life." Hannity, barely containing his glee, jumped in. "Whoa, hold on. Robert, she's calling you out. What's your response to that? Are you out of touch, as she claims?" De Niro's lips curled into a sneer. "Out of touch? I'm out here every day, talking to real people, not hiding behind a podium dodging questions. You, Leavitt, you're the one peddling fairy tales about Trump's golden age. You think people don't see through it? You're selling a fantasy to desperate folks, and it's shameful." The MAGA supporters in the crowd roared their dissent, waving signs that read, "Trump 2024. Leavitt raised a hand, silencing them with a single gesture. "Let's talk about fantasies," she said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "You've built a career on playing tough guys, but when it comes to politics, you're just another celebrity with an opinion. You backed Obama's drone strikes, Biden's inflation mess. Where's the accountability for that? Or do you just get a pass because you're famous?" De Niro's face flushed, his hands balling into fists. "Don't lecture me about accountability," he snapped. "I've put my name on the line, taken heat for speaking out. You're just a kid playing dress-up in a job you're not ready for. Trump's using you, and you're too naive to see it." The crowd gasped, the insult landing like a punch. Hannity leaned back, his eyes darting between the two. "Karoline, he's questioning your experience. You're 27, the youngest press secretary ever. Does that sting?" Leavitt's smile tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "It doesn't sting, Sean. It's predictable. When people can't argue facts, they attack age or looks or anything else they can grasp. I'm here because I earned it, not because I starred in some gangster flick. Mr. De Niro, you're not questioning my experience. You're scared of my voice." The audience roared, the MAGA contingent on their feet. De Niro shook his head, muttering under his breath. Hannity, sensing the moment, pressed further. "Robert, she's saying you're scared. That's a big claim. What's got you rattled?" De Niro jabbed a finger at Leavitt. "I'm not scared of her. I'm angry. Angry that someone so young, with so little perspective, is propping up a man who's tearing this country apart. You're not a voice, Leavitt. You're an echo. Trump's echo." The word stung, and for a fleeting moment Leavitt's composure flickered. Her eyes flashed, but she recovered quickly. "An echo?" she said, her voice rising. "I speak for millions who are tired of Hollywood elites like you telling them how to think. You call Trump divisive? Look in the mirror. Your rhetoric's been pitting Americans against each other for years." The crowd was electric, hanging on every word. De Niro leaned back, his expression a mix of disbelief and disdain. "You're good at this, I'll give you that," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "But you're playing a dangerous game. You think you're winning hearts? You're just fanning flames." Leavitt's eyes blazed. "If I'm fanning flames, it's because people are fed up with your sanctimonious lectures. You don't get to decide what America wants. They do." She pointed to the audience, who erupted in applause. De Niro's scowl deepened, his patience visibly fraying as the studio lights seemed to burn hotter. The studio pulsed with raw energy, the audience's applause still ringing as Leavitt's words hung in the air. De Niro's scowl carved deeper lines into his face, his eyes glinting with a mix of fury and defiance. He leaned forward, his voice a low growl. "You think pointing to a room full of MAGA hats makes you the voice of America? You're delusional, Leavitt. You're not speaking for the people. You're speaking for Trump's ego, and it's pathetic." The crowd's cheers turned to jeers, a wave of hostility crashing toward De Niro. Leavitt's expression didn't waver, her gaze locked on him like a laser. "Pathetic," she countered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "What's pathetic is a man who's spent his life pretending to be someone else, thinking he can lecture the rest of us on reality. America's done with your moralizing, Mr. De Niro. They want results, not your tantrums." Hannity, his grin practically predatory, seized the moment. "Karoline, you're calling out a legend here. Robert, she's saying you're irrelevant. How do you fire back?" De Niro's hands trembled slightly, but his voice boomed. "Irrelevant? I've been in the trenches, calling out nonsense when people like you were too scared to speak. You're a flash in the pan. Leavitt, Trump's flavor of the month. When he's done with you, you'll be nothing." The audience gasped, the insult landing like a slap. Leavitt's lips twitched, but her composure held. "Nothing?" she said, her tone icy. "I'm here because I fight for what I believe in, not because I need a spotlight. You, on the other hand, seem desperate for one. Tell me, Mr. De Niro, when's the last time you listened to someone outside your Hollywood bubble?" The MAGA supporters roared, their energy fueling Leavitt's momentum. De Niro's face darkened, his fingers tapping the table in a restless rhythm. "Don't patronize me," he snapped. "I've met more real people than you'll ever know. I've heard their stories, their pain. You? You're just regurgitating talking points from a man who doesn't care about anyone but himself." Hannity leaned in, his eyes gleaming. "This is getting personal. Karoline, he's saying you're just a mouthpiece. Can you prove him wrong?" Leavitt's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "I don't need to prove anything to you, Mr. De Niro. My record speaks for itself. I've faced down reporters, rallied voters, and stood by policies that lifted millions. You've got your Oscars, but I've got the trust of the American heartland. Who's really out of touch here?" The crowd exploded, their cheers shaking. The studio. De Niro shook his head, his disdain palpable. "Trust?" he scoffed. "You're selling snake oil. Trump's policies crushed the working class, gutted health care, and you're out here pretending it's a miracle. You're not fooling anyone with half a brain." Leavitt's smile returned, sharp and unforgiving. "If I'm selling anything, it's hope. Hope for a country tired of being talked down to by people like you. You call Trump's policies a failure? Look at the numbers. Lowest black unemployment in history, manufacturing jobs back, trade deals that put America first. You can't argue with that, so you just yell louder." De Niro slammed his fist on the table, the sound reverberating. "Numbers? You cherry-pick stats to prop up a fraud. I've seen what Trump's done to this country. Division, hate, chaos. You're complicit, Leavitt, and you're too young to even see the damage." The audience was a powder keg, half cheering, half booing. Hannity, relishing the chaos, pressed on. "Robert, you're calling her complicit. Karoline, that's a heavy charge. What's your defense?" Leavitt leaned forward, her voice steady but searing. "I'm not complicit in anything. I'm standing up for a vision of America that doesn't bow to elites who think they know better. You talk about division, Mr. De Niro? You've been stoking it for years, calling half the country deplorables. Maybe you're the one who's complicit." De Niro's eyes widened, his breath hitching. The crowd was on its feet, the noise deafening. He pointed at Leavitt, his voice rising. "You're twisting everything. I've never called anyone deplorable. I fought for unity, for decency. You're just a kid playing with fire, and you're gonna get burned. Leavitt's gaze didn't falter. If I'm playing with fire, it's because I'm not afraid to fight for what's right. You're the one who's scared, Mr. De Niro. Scared that your voice doesn't matter anymore. The studio seemed to hold its breath, the tension coiling, tighter as De Niro's face twisted with rage. The studio was a pressure cooker, the air thick with the weight of Leavitt's accusation. De Niro's face contorted, his eyes burning with a fury that seemed to ripple through the room. He rose slightly in his chair, his voice a guttural roar. Scared? You think I'm scared of you? You're a nobody, Leavitt. A kid riding trumps, coattails, thinking you're some kind of hero. You're nothing but a loudmouth with a title you don't deserve. The audience exploded, a cacophony of cheers and jeers splitting the room. Leavitt's expression remained unyielding. Her eyes, locked on De Niro's like a missile tracking its target. A nobody? She said, her voice calm but laced with venom. I'm the voice of millions who are sick of being dismissed by people like you. You call me a loudmouth? At least I'm speaking for something bigger than my own ego. Hannity, his eyes wide with delight, fanned the flames. Robert, she's hitting hard. You're a legend, but she's saying you're the one who's irrelevant. Can you take that lying down? De Niro's hands shook as he pointed at Leavitt. I've earned my place, he snarled. I've fought for this country, for its soul, while you're out here shilling for a man who'd sell it to the highest. Bitter. You think you're winning? You're just digging your own grave. The MAGA supporters roared their disapproval, their signs waving like battle flags. Leavitt raised a hand, her gesture commanding silence. My grave? She said, her tone slicing through the noise. I'm standing here facing you, because I believe in something. You're the one who's buried Mr. De Niro, buried under decades of privilege, thinking your fame gives you a free pass to judge everyone else. The crowd surged to its feet, the applause deafening. De Niro's face flushed, his breath coming in short, angry bursts. Privilege, he spat. I came from nothing, worked for everything. You're handed a podium and think you're untouchable. Trump's gonna drop you the second you're not useful anymore. Hannity leaned forward, his voice dripping with anticipation. Karoline, he's saying you're disposable. That's a low blow. How do you answer that? Leavitt's smile was a blade, sharp and cold. Disposable? I'm here because I deliver, not because I'm chasing applause. You, Mr. De Niro, you're the one who's replaceable. Hollywood's full of aging stars shouting into the wind. America's moved on, and you're still stuck in your own script. The audience roared, the energy electric. De Niro's eyes widened, his hands slamming the table again. You're out of line, he shouted. You think you can talk to me like that? I've seen your kind come and go, flashy, loud, and gone in a year. You're not special, Leavitt. You're just noise. Leavitt leaned forward, her voice steady but searing. Noise? I'm the sound of a country waking up, Mr. De Niro. You're the one who's fading out. You can't stand that people are listening to me, not you. That's why you're so angry, because you're losing. The studio was a tinderbox, the crowd's energy feeding the fire. Hannity, barely containing his excitement, pressed on. Robert, she's saying you're losing your grip. You've got a legacy, but is she right? Are you out of step with America? Niro's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Losing? I'm not the one hitched to a sinking ship. Trump's a disaster, and you're going down with him. You think this crowd's your army? They'll turn on you the second you slip. You're not a leader, Leavitt. You're a follower. The words cut deep, and for a moment, Leavitt's eyes flickered with something. Doubt, anger, resolve. She recovered quickly, her voice rising. A follower. I stand for a movement that's bigger than me, bigger than you. You're the one chasing relevance, throwing punches at a fight you can't win. America's choosing hope over your hate, and that's what you can't stand. The crowd was on its feet, the noise a tidal wave. De Niro's face was a mask of rage, his hands clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. "Hope?" he scoffed, his voice cracking. "You're selling lies dressed up as hope. You're not saving America. You're breaking it, and you're too blind to see it." Leavitt's gaze hardened, her voice a quiet storm. "If I'm breaking anything, it's the stranglehold people like you have had on this country for too long. You're not the arbiter of truth, Mr. De Niro. You're just a man who's run out of lines." The studio seemed to freeze, the tension a living thing as De Niro's eyes burned with something close to desperation. The studio was a crucible, the tension so palpable it seemed to hum in the air. De Niro's eyes, wild with a mix of fury and desperation, bore into Leavitt. His voice, when it came, was a ragged snarl. "Run out of lines? You think you've got me cornered? I've been standing up to bullies like Trump since you were in diapers, Leavitt. You're not breaking any stranglehold. You're just tightening his grip on this country." The audience erupted, a chaotic blend of boos and cheers splitting the room. Leavitt's face remained a mask of calm, but her eyes blazed with unyielding resolve. "Tightening his grip?" she said, her voice low and cutting. "I'm giving a voice to people you've ignored for decades. You're not fighting bullies, Mr. De Niro. You're bullying anyone who dares think differently from you. That's not courage, it's cowardice." Hannity, his face alight with the thrill of the clash, jumped in. "Karoline, you're calling a Hollywood icon a coward." "Robert, that's gotta sting. What's your comeback?" De Niro's hands trembled, his voice rising to a near shout. "Coward? I've put my career, my name, everything on the line to speak out. You're the coward, Leavitt, hiding behind Trump's shadow, parroting his lies. You think you're some kind of warrior? You're just a pawn in his game, and you're too green to see it." The MAGA contingent roared their dissent, their signs, thrusting into the air. Leavitt's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "A pawn?" she said, her tone dripping with disdain. "I'm playing a game you don't even understand. While you're screaming at award shows, I'm in the trenches, fighting for policies that actually help people. You're not on the line, Mr. De Niro. You're on a pedestal, and it's crumbling." The crowd was electric, their cheers shaking. The studio. De Niro's face twisted, his breath coming in short, angry bursts. "Pedestal?" he spat. "I've earned every inch of my place. You're propped up by a man who'd throw you under the bus for a headline. You're not a fighter, leave it. You're a prop, and you're fooling yourself if you think otherwise." Hannity leaned forward, his voice thick with anticipation. "Karoline, he's doubling down, saying you're just a prop. How do you counter that?" Leavitt's eyes narrowed, her voice a quiet blade. "I counter it with the truth. I'm here because I believe in a vision for America, one that doesn't need your approval. You call me a prop? Look at yourself, Mr. De Niro. You're clinging to relevance, shouting the same tired lines. The country's moved on, and you're still yelling at ghosts." The audience surged to its feet, the applause deafening. De Niro's hands slammed, the table, the sound like a thunderclap. "Ghosts? I'm fighting for the soul of this nation. You're the one haunted, Leavitt, haunted by a con man who's got you wrapped around his finger. You think you're winning? You're just his latest puppet show?" Leavitt leaned forward, her voice steady but searing. "If I'm a puppet, then what's your excuse? You've been dancing to Hollywood's tune for years, preaching unity while you tear down anyone who disagrees. I'm not here for applause, Mr. De Niro. I'm here for the people who want their country back." The studio was a tinderbox, the crowd's energy a living thing. Hannity, barely containing his excitement, pressed on. "Robert, she's saying you're the one who's out of touch. You've got a legacy, but is she stealing your thunder tonight?" De Niro's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "Stealing my thunder? She's stealing nothing. She's a flash of lightning, bright, loud, and gone in a second. Trump's using her, And when he's done, she'll be yesterday's news. You're not a threat, Leavitt. You're a tragedy." The words hung heavy, and for a moment Leavitt's composure wavered, her eyes flickering with something raw. She recovered swiftly, her voice rising. "A tragedy? The only tragedy here is a man who can't see the world's changed. You're not the voice of America, Mr. De Niro. You're a relic, and you're terrified because you know it." The crowd was on its feet, the noise a tidal wave. De Niro's face was a mask of rage, his hands clenched so tightly they shook. "Terrified?" he roared. "I'm not the one who should be scared. You're playing with fire, kid, and you're about to get burned." His voice cracked, the desperation in his eyes undeniable, as the studio lights seemed to pulse with the heat of their clash. The studio was a furnace, the crowd's roar a tidal wave crashing over the set. De Niro's words, raw and desperate, lingered in the air, his eyes locked on Leavitt, with a ferocity that bordered on unhinged. "You're about to get burned," he repeated, his voice hoarse, his finger jabbing toward her like a weapon. The audience was a sea of motion, MAGA signs waving, their cheers and boos a chaotic symphony. Leavitt stood unmoved, her posture regal, her eyes glinting with a quiet, unshakable fire. "Burned?" she said, her voice steady, slicing through the noise. "I'm not the one losing my grip, Mr. De Niro. You're shouting at a world that's stopped listening. America's choosing strength over your screams, and that's what's got you unraveling." Hannity, his face alight with the chaos, leaned forward. "Karoline, he's saying you're in over your head. Robert, she's calling you irrelevant. This is the final round. Make it count." De Niro's face twisted, his voice a guttural snarl. "Irrelevant? I've fought for this country's soul while you were still in school. You're a fad, Leavitt, a shiny toy for Trump's base. You think you're unstoppable? You're just a spark that'll fizzle out when he's done with you." The crowd's jeers surged, but Leavitt's smile was a blade, cold and precise. "A spark?" she countered, her tone laced with steel. "I'm a firestorm, Mr. De Niro, and it's sweeping through a country tired of your sanctimony. You're not fighting for America's soul. You're fighting for your own relevance, and you're losing badly." The MAGA supporters erupted, their applause shaking the rafters. De Niro's hands slammed the table, his eyes wild. "Losing? You're the one who's gonna crash. Trump's a fraud, and you're his cheerleader. You're not a leader, Leavitt. You're a follower, and history's gonna bury you." Hannity's eyes gleamed. "Karoline, he's predicting your downfall. You've got the mic. Hit back." Leavitt leaned forward, her voice a quiet storm. "History? I'm writing it right now, Mr. De Niro. I'm standing here for millions who want their country back, not your lectures. You're not a prophet. You're a has-been, and the only thing getting buried tonight is your credibility." The crowd was on its feet, the noise deafening. De Niro's face flushed, his breath ragged. "Credibility," he roared. "I've got more in my little finger than you'll ever have. You're a puppet, a nobody, and I'm done with this circus." He shoved his chair back, the screech of metal piercing the din, and tore off his mic, the cord dangling like a broken lifeline. Hannity's jaw dropped, but Leavitt didn't flinch. "Running away," she called, her voice clear and taunting. "That's what you do when you can't win, isn't it? Go back to Hollywood, Mr. De Niro. America's got this without you." The audience roared, their cheers a tidal wave of triumph. De Niro froze mid-step, his back to the stage, his shoulders heaving. For a moment it seemed he might turn back, but then he stormed toward the exit, his footsteps heavy, the door slamming behind him with a final, resounding thud. The crowd's cheers grew louder, MAGA hats waving like victory flags. Hannity, recovering, turned to Leavitt, his voice awed. "Karoline, you just took down a legend. How do you feel?" Leavitt's smile was serene, her eyes alight with quiet victory. "I feel like America spoke tonight, Sean. I'm just their voice, and I'm not backing down for anyone. Not De Niro, not anyone. This is about the people, not the elite. The crowd's applause was a thunderclap, their energy a living thing. Hannity shook his head, grinning. "Folks, you saw it here. A 27-year-old press secretary just sent a Hollywood titan packing. Karoline Leavitt, everyone!" As the cameras panned to Leavitt, she stood tall, her gaze steady, the weight of the moment settling around her. The studio lights gleamed, casting her in a glow that felt almost mythic. De Niro was gone, his exit a surrender that echoed in the silence he left behind. Leavitt had faced the storm and emerged not just unscathed, but triumphant, her voice ringing clear as the voice of a new era. The crowd's cheers followed her as the segment ended, a resounding affirmation that the night belonged to her, and to the movement she represented.